Today's video we are going to do a complete install with our SFT. We have a TSR Firewall. We're going to put an orange SFT wrap on there, grip on there, and we're actually going to run you through the whole process. So you'll be able to see us from opening up our kit, putting on our lacing rings, and then also actually installing the fiber tape, wetting the fiber tape, and compressing it. There's going to be a small timer down in the corner so you guys can actually follow along, make sure you get the timing exactly right, and just install your grip while we're doing it. So let's get after it. All right, right off the bat, make sure you have a nice glass of hot water here. This will be used to activate that fiber tape, that resin in that fiber tape. Also, a nice sharp razor knife. We have these disposable ones here in the shop that we use, but make sure it's fresh, nice and sharp. As you can see, we use both of these in the shop quite a bit. Our kit, SFT grip kit, comes with 2 rolls, enough to do 2 tools. Today we're doing a TSR Firewall here. And has plenty of lacing rings to do both as well. Today we're only going to use 2 large lacing rings, but you have really 8 of each kind, large and small. So you can use as many as you want on each tool. Make sure you open up and get your compression band ready to go. Open this up, put that over there, make sure it's ready to go. That way when you start your wrapping and compressing your fiber tape, it is ready. You don't have to mess with it later. We're going to pull out our gloves and get our lacing rings ready to go. Like I said, in this one we're only going to do 2. We like to do 2 lacing rings right here towards the top of the grip. I'm going to hook that in there, and then I put it the bottom of the smaller rings. That way when I wrap my fiber tape, it pushes right up against the rings, and it doesn't make those lacing rings go crooked on us. So you'll see those 2 are butted right up to the bottom of those right there. With our lacing rings in place, now we're going to put on our gloves. You get 2 pairs of gloves in these kits, so 1 for each tool. Make sure you wear the gloves. This does get a little messy. Now I'm not taping my tool off at all because I know this is a composite, so there's basically a plastic shell here, and the SFT resin doesn't stick to it very well. If you have a wooden tool, it might be smarter you to tape that off because it will get into the wood grains a little bit. Okay, we have our fiber tape here. This is when we need to get ready. I actually have a watch here that I'll be using for my timer. It's also advised that you use an actual timer on a phone. On our video, we'll have a timer over on the side so you can make sure you get this just right. Again, we'll be opening our fiber tape, pull it out, and we're going to wrap. We're going to start on the lower portion of the handle and work your way towards the top. Takes a little bit to get it started. I like about 2 layers, and then start at a 45-degree angle, and just keep that 45-degree angle going. Pull it kind of as tight as you can. You don't want to go too tight. But if you keep that 45 going, you'll have 2 layers throughout the grip, and especially on top of the lacing rings. And then I like to have a little bit of extra leading up the tool, and then level it off. Complete 2 full wraps. And this is where it's important. Make sure you cut this. Sharp knife. I like to use quick motions to cut that fiber tape. Hopefully you could see that. It might have been behind the tool, but I use quick motions. And in this part, we fold it over. I'm doing it towards me. I fold over. Make sure those frayed parts stay underneath the fiber tape. Might take you a little bit to get it right. That way they don't fray. Now, this is important. We're going to look at our timer right now. Okay, now I'm going to give this, remember this is going to go about 8 minutes. For the first minute or so, I am just spreading that resin. So there's not a lot of resin in one area. I'm just going to spread it around. Make sure it's nice and even. Okay, that way there's not a big clump of resin in one area. And I focus a lot of it on the end over here. So I'm moving a lot of that resin and moving it over to the end to make sure that has a nice seal once we start wetting. Now, you're going to take your hot water, dip your fingers into it, Spread it out on your hands, and then just slowly start adding that hot water to it. It's going to be sticky at first, and then it's going to get smoother. So just keep adding, slowly adding that water to it. I'll keep checking my timer. It's been 1:20 already, somewhere around there. Then I make sure I focus on the end over here, which is unfortunately away from the camera, but I focus on that end and I'm rubbing it nice and flat there. See how I gradually start increasing the amount of water? The hotter the water, the faster this will start to cure on you. Now I'm starting to add a good amount of water at this point. A little trick, if it's super hot and super humid out, you should be installing this, indoor at room temperature, anywhere between 65 and 75 degrees. But if it's really hot and humid, this might start to get really sticky. So if that starts to happen, don't be afraid to, once it's sort of set up, to go hands off. So I'm going to keep adding water here. Now I can add a whole lot of water. And if it starts to get super sticky, you've already kind of started your reaction, your curing time on that resin. You can go hands off. You've already applied enough water, and you can kind of just go hands off. So I'm going to kind of keep adding water and compressing for a little bit longer here. But then there's no problem with, especially once you have that end nice and sealed, just taking your hands off and letting that resin do its work. And it might start to get a little ugly, right? It's going to start expanding. All that resin's going to expand as it cures. But that's why we're going to compress it. At this point, you could even, if you really wanted to kind of speed things along, you could even pour a little extra water on top, get that heat on there, get that reaction really started in that resin. So this isn't too sticky yet. I'm going to go hands off as if it were getting kind of sticky. Oh, it's starting to a little bit, right? So now we can kind of just go hands off if you need to. Just let that resin start to cure and react to that water. Don't be too concerned with how it looks at this point. We're going to fix that when we compress it. This one's not getting too sticky, so I see how my hands can still glide over it. It's not too bad. So you can keep compressing it if you want to, but again, we could just let it react for the next, up to that 8 or 10 minute mark before we compress it. All right about now is that 8-minute mark. I'm going to really go hands off and let that resin kind of finish curing and expanding and doing that reaction. And that 10-minute mark is when we're going to compress it. But I'm going to let it finish doing its thing for the next 2 minutes or so, and then we'll compress it. Right before I compress it, I will, again, use my hands to recompress the resin into the tape before we use the co-band to really compress it all together. All right about there is about the 10-minute mark. So we're going to take our cohesive wrap, make sure the FireWrap is facing outward, the logo is facing outward, otherwise it will leave that beautiful FireWrap logo on your grip. I'm going to pull this nice and tight, really almost as tight as I can without ripping it. And I'm going to make sure there's no wrinkles. I'm going to maximize my coverage, really just connecting end over end. You can cut it there, and then you're going to leave that in place for about 2 minutes. If you're worried about it sticking, you can always check it after the first minute. We found that 2-minute period is right about the perfect time after you've let this thing, react for a good 10 minutes. That 12-minute mark is perfect time to peel it off. Don't leave it on any longer than that. That 2 minutes is right where you want to be. Right now it's going on about a minute. You'll see the resin start to kind of push through the co-band, the cohesive wrap. Again, it's been 1 minute. I could check. It's not sticking at all, right? So I can go back, leave that in place for another minute. All right, there's been 2 minutes. I can peel this. You might get a couple black fibers on there. You can usually scrape those off with your finger if you need to. In the end, sometimes we just just leave them there. Then we're going to give that 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to rewrap. So we're actually going to bring this up to our rewrap stage, and then that sits there for 20 minutes, and then you take it off, and then after another hour or so, your grip is ready to go. Just make sure you wear gloves for the first 24 hours in case there's any continued uncured resin, coming through the fiber tape. The key to this is, you got a ton of resin in there. It's basically a rubberized grip with a polyurethane resin, but also a polyester weave all the way throughout it. So it's not as hard as fiberglass. Polyester we found lasts longer because it's not super hard. It doesn't wear down. So it's really super strong, and it's going to last you a whole lot longer than any hockey tape or anything like that, and it is washable. So it takes a little bit to put it on, but you're going to be super happy with the performance of it. So I'm going to let this run until that 2 or 3 minute mark, and then I am going to rewrap it. And again, we rewrap it just to help control that continued resin that continues to kind of work its way through the weave of the fiber tape. All right, that's been 2 or 3 minutes. We're just going to rewrap one more time. This time a little bit more gentle, not as tight. We're just trying to help control those resin fingers for the next 20 minutes as that resin cures. So this one, make sure you pull enough to get maximum coverage. That way you have enough cohesive wrap ready for your next roll. Just like that. So we'll give that another 20 minutes. We'll take that off, and then this grip will be ready to go. You can let it finish curing for up to 2 hours, but as long as you're wearing gloves in the first 24 hours, you could put it to work if you wanted to. You can see how that resin wipes off plastic and metal very easily. The only one you have to be careful of is wood. Wood fibers getting into the grain of the wood. So again, let that sit for 20 minutes and then it's ready to go.